Hey guys, Mikoshi here. Today we're going to be talking about the Original Sin Tornado Shot. It was a build that many have asked me to make a guide on, and I didn't feel like doing so because I thought it wouldn't be as strong as it is. I knew its strength, but I thought that compared to Omniscience, Original Sin is not even comparable. But after testing it and playing it, I think that Original Sin is, matter of fact, undervalued of how strong it is and how powerful it is, and I think pretty much every single bow enjoyer should at least play it before it gets nerfed, if it does. But yeah, no, it's a very, very strong build. I did Uber bosses with it with ease. Sanctum, absolutely crazy, and for mapping, it's a very, very smooth experience. I came back to the original PowerPoint theme. I have a ton more fun doing so. I find it better than editing my videos and stuff. It takes a long time to edit videos, and you know, there's something about PowerPoints, I don't know why. It also permits me to make better guides because I can spend more time on research and testing over editing, because I've not been posting every week because I'm very, very busy, but that's going to be the goal in the end. And if I'm able to do the PowerPoints, I won't get burned out and I'm able to do more guides, you know? And in the end, it worked for me. So why would I change it? So I'm going to stick to PowerPoints. I think it's going to be better for me and for the direction of this YouTube channel. Now for the next video though, it will be a general guide to MF for anyone who is interested in Magic Find. It is not a build guide, so if you're not a Tornado Shot or you have, an MF or old MF and you want to get into it, this video will give you pretty much all the knowledge needed to go into MF. It won't be specific strats, but I will talk about pretty much every single thing you need to know about MF, and then you can choose which direction you would like to take. I will be making MF builds for all budgets, whether it's League or Standard, soon enough, so don't worry about that. Now to get into the video, let's talk about what is Original Sin, Original Sin versus Omniscience, the build function, and the overview. Now, Original Sin versus Omniscience. It's a big debate. Do I go OS or do I go Omni? Original Sin does make our enemies resistance 0 and can have more chaos penetration, right? So you can add penetration as well as the 0. But we don't have, when we're making the Original Sin, we're often not going to spec anything into chaos penetration, and we're going to concentrate on just flat damage, and the Original Sin will basically take care of all the elemental questions. Omniscience, however, will give us huge amount of penetration, which will often be a lot higher than our enemy's resistance, right? So the enemy's resistance will often go into the negative for the hit. So example, the enemy's resistance is 50, often our penetration could go up to 100%, right? Original Sin works well with Far Shot, but up to a certain range, which is 60. But Omniscience can work at any range. So if you want to go even further, shoot from even further, off-screen, stuff like that, Omniscience will be king over that. And going Original Sin will also oblige us to use specific items, such as the Original Sin Ring, Expedition's End, Xerxes' Heart, and Heat Shiver. They give us a huge amount of DPS, but they're pretty much set in stone. When you're playing Omniscience, all you really need to do is invest into Omniscience rings, and the rest can be interchanged pretty easily. As well, when you're going Omni, you don't have to invest as much in elemental resistance because your elemental resistance will go up the more Omni you have. But with Original Sin, when you're using Expedition End, Xerxes' Heart, and Heat Shiver, as well as one ring as Original Sin, there's not a lot of places you can add elemental resistance. Now the best place would be then to go for the +4 elemental resistance with the 35% increased effect cluster jewels, but you're gonna have to roll for that. Now both builds will shine when you go physical to cold conversion, so either Omni or Original Sin, the best version is physical to cold conversion. The entry cost of Omniscience is lower and is easier to get into in earlier leagues. You can get Omni pretty easily. All you have to do is farm the Exarch, so it's not a rare drop. You can make the Omniscience rings, which cost 2 to 5 divines max each. Omniscience, if you want to buy it directly, is 10 to 15 divines, and then Black Sun Crest or Heat Shiver, I don't even think they're they cost divines, and it's pretty easy, and they can work pretty much on any build, tornado shot or lightning arrow, whether it's physical to cold conversion or triple elemental. The entry cost of original sin tornado shot, however, is a lot higher because of the original sin ring, which is already, I think, 120 divines. As well, it's a drop from Sanctum, so before you have very good players that do no hit Sanctums, it will take a while before getting into original sin. Expedition, Heat Shiver, and Zephyrs Heart are quite cheap, however, so if you do have original sin, making the build is pretty much original sin and a good bow. You could go triple elemental, but at that point I think it's just simply better to go for a normal tornado shot, because going triple elemental, you don't have as strong of an effect as Heat Shiver, which effectively doubles your DPS. Now if you guys did not understand what I just said, don't worry, the rest of the guide will help you understand better. Yeah, well, first, my opinion of original sin versus omniscience. In terms of uber min-maxing, omniscience is king. You can reach several billions of DPS in League. I reached 3.8 billion, and in standard you can go in even in the tens of billions. As well, when going Omni, you only require the Omni rings and the Omniscience amulet, and the rest of the build can be changed however you like. So you can make it a lot tankier, a lot faster, or a huge ton of the DPS. Now obviously, going Omni, you don't go MF, but you could probably drop your, well, it wouldn't be considered Omniscience, but you know, you can make it tankier, faster, or more DPS. With Original Sin, with the specific uniques, which are kind of set in stone, it kind of makes the build less versatile and a ton harder to make it tanky, alright? So if you wanted a tanky tornado shot, I don't think Original Sin is the way to go. However, in terms of powerhouse, I think Original Sin is better than Omniscience for the average player. So if you're an average player, if you're able to get Original Sin and, you know, get up to the Mage Blood type of tier, Original Sin will be better than Omniscience. At a point where you have a mirror tier bow and have a physical to cold setup, so maybe a mirror tier bow, Mage Blood, and Original Sin, or mirror tier bow, Omniscience, and Mage Blood, I think the Original Sin will be a better build. On paper, Omniscience will always be best. However, in game, you will feel a huge difference with Original Sin, and I'm telling you, Original Sin is very strong. Now, to make it like more simple, if you're on the lower end of the mirror tier, so if you have, I don't know, 2 or 3 mirrors, maybe 4, I think Original Sin is the best tornado shot possible. Now, you can make an Original Sin without any mirror items, and you can make it even stronger the more mirrors you have, right? It can scale very well with mirrors and with currency, but it's gonna hit a point where it can't because it's limited by unique items, and that's why Omniscience will be better in the end. But you can invest in a mirror tier bow, quiver, ring, mirror tier Mage Blood, stuff like that. Or you could do it without any mirror tier items, which is 100% possible, and it is very strong. Alright, now let's actually get into the build. Let's first talk about Original Sin, which is the centerpiece of our build. It is a Sanctum only drop, which only happens when you do a level 83 Sanctum run without getting hit once. It will drop, so often you're not going to farm it yourself. It's going to be people who farm Sanctums that will farm Original Sins. What it does basically is it converts all of our elemental damage into chaos damage. Now our goal will be to have the most amount of elemental damage for it to then be converted to chaos. Now if we only deal physical damage, Original Sin is useless because it does not convert physical. That's why we're gonna go for the physical to cold conversion, because we can increase and scale our physical damage to then convert it to cold, just like normal physical to cold conversion builds, and then we can scale chaos damage on top, so we will have a double conversion. Another great thing about Original Sin is that nearby enemies' chaos resistance is 0. This will help us synergize a few items, but it does have few drawbacks. But having 0 resistance is huge because we don't really need elemental penetration. Now, let's first talk about the nearby tech. Nearby is quite a general term. and it changes depending on the item. For Original Sin, the nearby radius is 6 meters. So now we often don't use meters in the game. We are going to use unit distance. In POB, you're often going to see when people are using far shot, they're going to have 70 unit distance. That's basically 7 meters. So 1 meter is not one distance unit, but 10. So 1 unit is 0.1 meter. This means in a range of 60 units, all enemies, so up to 60 to 0, all enemies have 0% resistance to chaos, no matter their modifiers. That's quite of a big range for nearby, which enables us to use far shot instead of point blank. So we can use far shot, so stay away from the enemies at a safe distance, as well as having a ton more DPS because we shoot from far. Now, to give you an example, this is the character, and the Original Sin range is going to end up here. Now, for Expedition's End, the nearby will stop at 30 or 3 meters. So if you don't know what Expedition's End, we will talk about it later, but this is the radius of the chill effect of Expedition's End. Now, the 0% resistance tech. With Original Sin, when you are nearby enemies, the resistance will be set to 0. Okay, it's important to know that it is like set to 0, so no matter the modifiers, which means if you have modifiers that modify the chaos resistance, it will not count. Example, Despair can give minus 30% to chaos resistance. Even if you despair an enemy, it will be set to 0. So let's say originally the enemy had 50 chaos res. You put despair, it goes to minus 20, it goes to 20, sorry, and then it gets set to 0. Let's say the enemy's resistance was 0, then you hit despair on it, it goes to minus 30. Well, then Original Sin will make it from minus 30 to 0. However, sources of chaos penetration will work with the 0% because it does not modify the resistance, it penetrates the resistance. Alright, the second main piece of our build is going to be Expedition's End. It's a unique body armor that enables all damage types to freeze, which is important, as well as it chills nearby enemies on a 3 meter radius. On top of that, it does increase the chance of our hits to freeze. However, once we hit 100% chance to crit, we have a 100% chance to freeze. Therefore, this mod, the third mod, is kind of useless for us. Now, this chest is nutty. Why? Because it enables us to use our best friend, Heat Shiver, effectively doubling our DPS, because we are dealing chaos damage, which means we can't deal cold damage to freeze enemies, but thanks to Expedition's End, we are able to. Heat Shiver will make us gain 1% of our cold damage as extra fire damage per the percentage of the effect of our chill on enemies. Example, we have a 30% increased effect of chill. We will effectively have 30% more damage because we gain 30% of our cold damage, which is the totality of our damage, as extra fire. This synergizes well with the Expedition's End if the enemies are in the 3 meter radius, right? Because the first hit, they're not going to be frozen, but they might be chilled. So they are instantly chilled, and the first hit will already have a buff from Heat Shiver. Now, where Heat Shiver shines is against frozen enemies. And when enemies are frozen, we gain 100% of our cold damage. So all of our damage before the conversion to Original Sin as extra fire. And when we're using Heat Shiver, basically, it's our DPS times 2. So Heat Shiver is unbelievably important, and I don't think it is something you should replace ever. Now, Zerfi's Heart. Another very strong item is the unique amulet Zerfi's Heart. Thanks to this amulet, we can chill, shock, and ignite enemies with chaos damage. This amulet is great because shocking enemies will make them take more damage and can scale very well with our damage. The ignite is not that important, and the chill is not that important, right? Because we will freeze the enemies either way. And ignite, well, it's kind of cool, but damage over time is not as strong as, you know, the hits, because our hits are uncapped while damage over time is capped. Now, what's really cool about Zerfi's Heart is it's the additional mod that you read, gain Soul Eater for 20 seconds when you use a Val skill. What is Soul Eater? Soul Eater is a buff that increases our attack speed by 5% per stack. And 1 kill equals 1 stack. Now, let's say you pop a Val skill, and you kill 50 monsters within 20 seconds, you have 250% increased attack speed. That is nuts. In a few seconds, we can kill hundreds, making us a goddamn speedy tornado shot. It will also increase our size, which is kind of cool. As you can see in this image, he has a lot of stacks, but that's not really important. Now, what we will use for a Val skill is Val Haste. We use Haste on a normal build, so we use it in our normal setup, and having Val Haste will simply be a buff in mapping, because you just shoot faster, which is great, and on top of that, it enables us to use Soul Eater for 20 seconds. So it's a win-win with zero drawbacks. Now, there is a downside to Xerxes' Heart, is it increases our attribute requirements by 50%, and we're often going to be very, very short. The best way to beat that, and that synergizes well with the Tattoo League, I'm not sure if it's going to go core or not, so if you're watching this video, it might not be the case anymore, but if you do have access to tattoos, it's Elegant Hubris, which can give you the Supreme Ostentation Keystone. What it does is it ignores attribute requirements, but you gain no inherent bonuses from attributes, which means you can have 0 attributes and still be able to use all of your items without having to think about, oh, do I have enough dex, do I have enough strength, do I have enough this and that, blah blah blah. However, this will make it impossible for us to use Lethal Pride, right, because it's a timeless jewel, and we lose the double damage. But when you use a well-rolled Elegant Hubris, you can still have quite a bit of DPS thanks to it. It won't be as strong as Lethal Pride, but if you pair it with Supreme Ostentation and a ton of tattoos without having to spec into attributes, it will end up being a better option than Lethal Pride. Now, Elegant Hubris, as I said, is not 100% needed for your build. You can run it without, but it can help a lot, especially if you feel like tattooing yourself. Its primary use will be for Supreme Ostentation, and what's really cool about Supreme Ostentation is you have no need of attributes and you lose their inherent bonuses, but you still gain bonuses from items. There is a keystone called Magebane, which gives plus 1% chance to suppress spell damage per 15 dexterity. Now, I don't say you should go up to it, but if you use Journey Tattoo of the Makan Nui, that which grants a random keystone, you have a chance of hitting Magebane next to your tree. When using Magebane, it can give multiple dozens of, like maybe 20, 30, 40% chance to suppress spell damage with a single passive point, which is very, very strong. Alright, now for the tech, the physical to cold conversion. If I will touch quickly on the subject in case some of you guys are not familiar with tornado shot builds. Physical to cold conversion tornado shot builds are builds that scale the most amount of physical damage to then convert it 100% to cold. This is a great tech because in the beginning, scaling damage is going to be easy, but there's going to be a point where to scale even more damage, you're going to need a lot of resources. Going with a conversion helps split the scaling to be easier to scale. So basically, you can scale physical damage a ton. You reach the point where it's too much resources. It then gets converted to cold, and then you can scale cold on top of that. Going 100% conversion as well is very easy. 40% is from the passive tree mastery, which is pretty much mandatory. And then you can go for the 25% on the quiver implicit or the 25% from the glove. Example, if you're using Chaos Spirit, yeah, I think it's Chaos Spirit, the gloves, Chaos gloves, or a multi-link build, so the gloves that have multiple gem supports, and 40% with the Watcher's Eye, or you can easily just go for the 60% cold convert gloves with the 40% from your tree, which is the easiest way to go for. For physical to cold conversions, the most important aura will be using Hatred because it literally abuses the OP interactions of physical to cold conversions. Now, it's not the only aura you will run. It's going to be in the POB. I ran Hatred, Precision, Haste, and I think I ran Herald of Purity or something. But Hatred is the most important aura. Now, conversion follows a specific order. It's physical, lightning, cold, fire, chaos. For our build, we're going to go physical, cold, and chaos, simply put. If you're interested in the math and in-depth explanation of physical to cold conversion, I do invite you to watch my video on how to scale billions of DPS. I go into examples, pretty simple examples, so you understand better, but I think this should be enough of a crash course for you guys. Now, to generalize, to make it simple and quick for you, our build works by having a physical bow that scales the most amount of physical damage possible, which makes hatred stronger and stronger. We then convert all of our physical damage into cold, which enables all of our damage to be converted into chaos thanks to original sin. And we will set nearby enemies in a radius of 6 meters to 0, which is a huge DPS, all that thanks to original sin. Expedition's End then permits 100% of our physical damage to freeze, which enables Heat Shiver that doubles our DPS. Xerfi's Heart will help us shock enemies as well, and gain Soul Eater buffs, which is very good in mapping. Finally, we will use Elegant Hubris to give us Supreme Ostentation so that we do not have to worry about attributes, which is a downside of Xerfi's Heart, as well permit us of tattooing ourselves and our tree as we wish, because we gain no inherent bonuses from attributes. Now, I decided to go a bit differently this time. In my other videos, I went through like every single item and gems, but I was told that people will often prefer POBs, so I will have POB linked. Please guys, let me know though if you prefer that, or if you prefer my old way of just simply going over items and explaining why you should go for those items and which mod to look out for. I will have different POBs. Some I think I found which are quite interesting. I will try to find the owner of that POB and, you know, name him. But there will be some of my own POBs, which is one I'm going to try to make it mirror tier, and the other one no mirror tier. On that note, that's going to be the end of the video. I tried to make it a bit shorter because I know it kind of scares people when they see 1 hour videos and stuff. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Please let me know if you liked the video. If you wish to support, I do have a Patreon now, and if you want to join our Discord as well, it's a community of around 5,000 people, which is kind of cool. If you want to join in, chill, find groups, sell items, or ask me questions, you can do so in the comments or in the Discord. Have a nice one.